Welcome to this online tutorial on the topic of time management and organisational skills. I'm James Sweetman. I work as an executive and personal coach and self-skills trainer. I frequently work with people both at an individual and group level. And let's face it, when it comes to this topic, time management is an area that we can all struggle with from time to time. So what are we going to cover? Well, over the course of this webinar, I want to share with you some practical tips and insights. A few tools, a few frameworks that will be of benefit to you. I always think we come to an upskilling like this because we feel challenged or overwhelmed or stressed or frustrated. And when you get a few, what I would like to refer to as distinctions, it gives us more information so we feel more in control both of ourselves and of our workflow. So specifically, what are we going to cover? Well, there's three key areas, and they all begin with the letter R so that we can remember them more easily. The first R is results-focused mindset. For me, that's a concept that's right at the heart of effective time management and organisational skills. So we'll spend a little time on that one. The second R is rituals. Rituals are those habits and routines that we all have. Some of those habits serve us well, some maybe are gone beyond their sell-by date. They're no longer useful to us. The last R is resources. Now, when I speak about resources, I'm not speaking about pens and paper and staplers. I'm speaking about how we resource ourselves, our energy levels, our motivation, our enthusiasm. Think of it this way. Think of all the tips and do's and don'ts of time management and organisational skills and let that be a car. But if you've no fuel to put into that car, those tips and insights will be of minimal benefit to you. Before we get stuck into our three R's, one or two other things for you to consider. Have a think about what would enhanced skills in this area get for you. It's always useful to be aware of our motivation for upskilling. Perhaps it's because you're looking to reduce feelings of frustration or overwhelm or stress, and that's very valid. Maybe it's because you're interested in climbing a career ladder and you know that enhancing your skills in this area will serve you well. It's also important to recognise, though, that time management and organisational skills is not a panacea. It's not a one cure for all. But when I look at time management and organisational skills, I see it as a way of feeling more in control. All of those emotions like frustration and stress and overwhelm, they're all symptoms. The root cause of them is a feeling of not being in control. And upskilling in this area, I like to think, makes us feel more in control both of ourselves and of our workflow. So the first R we're going to look at is a results-focused mindset. And as I said, for me, this is a concept right at the heart of effective time management and organisational skills. I like the term result. Some people might use goal or objective or aim, and they're valid. But just as in a football match, a goal may be scored or not scored, but there will always be a result. What a result-focused mindset means for me is having a very clear intention, so I know what it is I'm trying to achieve and maybe how I'm going to achieve it. People who are skilled in this area, either consciously or unconsciously, operate a results-focused mindset. And they operate it over three different timescales: short, medium and long term. And that's what we're going to look at now. When we're looking at a results-focused mindset over a short time period, we're really looking at each interaction that we have over the course of a day. Maybe it's a meeting you're attending, maybe it's an important phone call, maybe you're even dealing with someone over the counter. But you're giving a moment's consideration to what you want to achieve out of those encounters. You're defining for yourself what success looks like. Otherwise, it's a bit maybe like a dart thrower trying to hit the treble 20 and not knowing where the dartboard is. When we're looking at developing a results-focused mindset over a medium time frame, what I'm really referring to there is how you operate your to-do list. Now, I'm assuming that if you've come to this webinar, that you already operate some sort of to-do list. If not, it's something that you need to start doing. It's very pressurized if we're trying to remember everything in our heads. Let the old adage work for you, which is ink it, don't think it. Research around productivity in this area tells us that operating a weekly to-do list is more effective than operating a daily to-do list. On a daily basis, we might have a day where, events just get away from us. But over the course of a week, we will certainly have the opportunity to be more productive. Of course, most to-do lists are should lists. An extra tip in this area is identifying both on a daily and a weekly basis what are the items on your to-do list that you must do. because it's a good way to distinguish between priorities, or even just being clear on, what's essential for you to do and what's nice for you to do. The third time frame that we can apply a results-focused mindset to is a longer time frame. So for me, this is maybe a month, a quarter, 6 months, a year, 5 years. If you're in a senior position, part of your role is thinking further ahead, strategic thinking, big picture thinking. When we think about longer term time frames, though, instinctively they will become more personal for us. What is it that you want to achieve career-wise or personal life-wise over the next 6 months, the next year, the next 5 years? When we think of it over a longer time period, there's an opportunity for us to be more proactive. Generally speaking, the shorter the time frame, the more reactive we will be. But over a longer time period, we have opportunities to take preventative measures, but also to be more proactive as well. And when we feel proactive, we feel more in control. The second of our 3 R's is rituals. Rituals, those habits and routines that serve us or maybe no longer serve us. I always think in this area, we are habit-forming creatures. We form habits and routines wherever we can because it makes life easier for us. But sometimes if we're looking to enhance our learning or to upskill, we have to examine what some of those habits are and maybe eliminate the ones that are no longer of benefit to us. So we're going to look at habits, rituals, routines in 3 different areas. The first is our morning rituals. Do you arrive at work at the same time most days? What's your habits when you get into work? Do you hang up your coat and boil the kettle and make a cup of coffee? Open up the PC and check email? Well, here's a tip to incorporate into your morning ritual, one that really positively impacts on our productivity. And that's what I call win the first 20 minutes. And by that I mean not opening up email for the first 20 minutes. If we think about what email is a to-do list that other people are writing for you. You want to proactively action one of your musts, one of your essential items from your to-do list first thing. So it means you're starting the day as you mean to go on. One other tip to incorporate into your morning routine is to take just 2 or 3 minutes to plan the day ahead. This is how we can develop our results-focused mindset. So you're looking over the day and seeing what you have on your schedule and determining what you want to achieve from it. The second area we're going to look at when we're looking at rituals is our evening rituals. And by that I mean how you're closing the working day. Now, this brings us into the territory of work-life balance as well. If you want to leave the office at 5:30 in the evening, or you want to leave by 6 o'clock 3 days a week, when do you have to start planning to leave by 5:30? And it's probably not 25 past 5. Sometimes we can have difficulty leaving work behind us. We carry it around in our heads even though we physically left our place of work. For me, a good ritual to have at the end of the day is to review your to-do list, maybe cross off the items that you've achieved, which gives us a sense of satisfaction and it's a way of measuring progress. But then maybe highlighting what you want to start with the following day. You've identified what your must is that you want to start with first thing as you're winning the first 20 minutes the following morning. One other tip that's useful to add into our evening ritual, and you can do this driving home or on the bus going home, is again just spending a minute or 2 thinking about what you did well over the course of the day, because there will be many things you've done well. Maybe we can also think about, with hindsight, is there anything I would have done differently? I always think those 2 questions, what did I do well, what could I do differently? They're like the handrails on a learning curve. That's how we're assessing and measuring our own progress. The third area where we have rituals is all around technology. Technology has advanced so fast in recent years that studies around productivity and dealing with contactability have not caught up with it yet. But we sort of know deep down that when we're dealing with technology, one of the big issues we have to deal with is controlling our contactability. We want to be available, we want to be approachable, we want to be helpful, but there are times when maybe we need to switch the devices off. For most of us with iPhones and iPads, we can be literally carrying our work around with us. Now, there's no rights and wrongs in this area. There is that general principle, though, that we need to be aware of, which is, we train or we teach people how to treat us. What messages do I want to send out? What precedents do I want to send out in terms of contactability? So there are our first two R's, results-focused mindset and rituals. The last area we're looking at is resources. And as I said, when we're looking at resources, we're looking at our levels of enthusiasm, our levels of motivation. I like a very modern definition of leadership, which is leaders are responsible for the energy they bring into a room. Now, we don't need to be in a position of authority to apply that. From a personal leadership point of view, we need to acknowledge the fact that I'm responsible for how I show up. When I'm looking at how I resource myself, there are three key things I try to remember. The first is around hydration. We want to be drinking water. If we think of some of the habits we have during the working day of maybe having a few cups of tea or a few cups of coffee, all of those drinks dehydrate us. And when we're in work, or this applies to study as well, we want to be able to concentrate. But if we're getting dehydrated, our concentration levels drop. So water keeps us alert. The other area I pay attention to is nutrition. Now, I'm not a nutritionist, but what tends to work for me is the more naturally colourful food is, generally the better it is for me. The last area when we're looking at resourcing ourselves is around rest. Stephen Covey, who wrote the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, the 7th habit is sharpen the saw. Sometimes we need to take time out just to rest and recharge. Sometimes when I'm working with people in this area of time management and organisational skills, they're not really after extra tips and insights because they sort of know what it is they need to do or should do. But many of them are just quite simply exhausted, and what they need is a good sleep, not necessarily more time management or organisational skills. So we've looked at our 3 R's. We've looked at developing a results-focused mindset, our rituals, and how we resource ourselves. 2 further points to consider. I always think we can be ruthless with how we organise ourselves and how we manage our time, but we should always remain gracious with people. The higher up you go in an organisation, the more you achieve through others. But irrespective of our role, we have to work in partnership with our colleagues. So our time management or organisational skills should never conflict with our interpersonal skills, our communication skills, or our working relationships. One final tip to remember is in the area of working smarter. Now, that's a phrase that many people utter, but we tend to forget that working smarter always means identifying what you're no longer going to do and to stop doing it. Now, that doesn't mean you're dropping a core part of your work, but perhaps there's a habit or a routine that's no longer serving you. If you're looking to spend more time maybe planning your day or writing a weekly to-do list, it usually means we have to identify something to drop. Sometimes we need to eliminate something before there is space to create something else. There's only ever going to be 168 hours in the week. Okay, so what have we covered? We've looked at the 3 R's. We've looked at developing a results-focused mindset and maybe applying it over a short, medium and longer time frame. We've looked at some of our rituals, some of our habits and routines, our morning habits, our evening habits, and some of our habits around technology. Lastly, we looked at resources and how we're resourcing ourselves, maybe how we're looking after our own well-being so that we have energy to give to the day. Time management and organisational skills falls under the umbrella heading of soft skills. And for me, anything to do with soft skills is often grounded in common sense, but sometimes common sense is not common practice. To fully harness your learning from this webinar, it's important for you now to identify what are 2 or 3 actions you can take. That old phrase of knowledge is power is not really true. It's only in the application of our knowledge does greater effectiveness follow. So I hope you have found this webinar to be of benefit. and that you've identified maybe 2 or 3 actions that you can take that will allow you to harness your learning. And I wish you every success.